Good morning, everybody. I don't know how many of you had to travel the same mountains I did, but it was getting a little bit dicey, but we got here. Praise the Lord. So, thank you for coming again. It's been a full week, a lot of information. Can be a little overwhelming at times, but we're being blessed, aren't we? So, thank you for coming. Same old announcement about lunch. You're all welcome to have lunch with us today. Tomorrow will be Barbara's seminar. Her last lecture of her seminar will be during the church service here, because this is an Adventist church, so on Saturday mornings this is our church service, but she will give the message tomorrow, so we'll be blessed by her one more time tomorrow.
So welcome back, everyone. We're going to continue our journey today, our journey through our gastrointestinal tract. It's quite a fascinating journey, isn't it? It's a fascinating journey what takes the food that was on your plate, breaks it down to microscopic little substances which gets absorbed out of our gut and into the blood. Because anything that goes into your gastrointestinal tract is not part of you or me until it gets broken down to tiny little substances and then get absorbed into the blood. And remember what the blood is. The blood is the life of the flesh. So when God says in Romans chapter 12, starting at verse 1 and 2, I beseech you therefore, brethren, meaning I plead with you, that you present your bodies living sacrifices, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And you know why it's so reasonable? Because it's nice living in a body that works. But notice it said, by the mercies of God. It's really by God's strength, by God's power that we can do this. And the other verse that I'd like to mention is in 1 Corinthians 3, 16 and 17, where it says, know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy, for the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are. I'd like to suggest that God actually doesn't destroy. Well, he doesn't do the destroying. We do it. We do it by the way we treat our bodies. But in the next breath, let me very quickly say, many are sick through ignorance. They don't realise that the very food they're eating, the very way they're eating it, the very thing that they're doing to their body is actually defiling their body. Because where we're going to go today, we're going to go down to the sewage system. And if the sewage system isn't working well, then the whole body can be contaminated, and as that old word says in the Bible, defile. Dr. Kellogg, very famous doctor, of course passed now because he's from the mid-1800s. Did you know that his exercise equipment was on the Titanic? So mid-1800s, and he had a health retreat in Battle Creek with 1,000 beds. Isn't that amazing? It was world famous. People from all over the world came to learn how to look after their bodies and keep them in good health. And he said 3 evacuations of food a day should equal 3 intakes. He said if you're eating 3 meals a day and you're evacuating once a day, you're constipated. And how many people think that going once a day is actually normal? Well, I think we've forgotten what normal is. And if you notice that your colon has a mind of its own, it won't do what you tell it. And if you have constipation and you tell it to go, it won't. And if you have diarrhea and you tell it to stop, it won't. But the colon is greatly influenced by what happens further up. In fact, it has everything to do with what happens in the colon. So I'm going to give a quick rundown on what we looked at yesterday. Digestion begins in the mouth. Have you been practicing your chewing? Chew, chew, chew. You should chew probably about 30 chews. Chew, chew, chew. And it's an alkaline environment. And the two foods that are broken down in the stomach are starch and saturated fat. Starch under the action of the salivary amylase called ptyalin. Do you remember when it first appears in the mouth? What age? When you get your molars, which could be anywhere between 14 months and maybe 22 months. The other food that's broken down in the mouth is saturated fat under the action of lingual lipase. Then we go through our cardiac sphincter, the little double-layered valve there, and into the stomach. And the stomach, what alkalinity is it? Acid, absolutely. And should it be acid? Yes. Absolutely, yep. And pepsinogen unites with hydrochloric acid, releases pepsin, and pepsin breaks down protein. Then we come to the duodenum. We come through the pyloric sphincter. That's the little gateway at the end. Did you know that when you wake up in the morning, it's open? That's why the best thing to do in the morning is drink water, even if you're able, warm water, because it'll go right through. And it's not until you think, smell food, the pyloric sphincter shuts up in preparation for the food that is coming down. I'm going to tell you a story, and this is a true story. I'd heard references to this story, and then I read an article that gave me the name of the book and the author. Our secretary found it for me in it was a college library in the southern states of America. They charged me 20 cents. It cost me $20 by the time I had the book. It's a long name. It's basically Observations on the Physiology of Digestion by Dr. William Beaumont. The first probably half of the book is the story, and this is the story. The book was written in 1844, so this is the story. It probably happened in the early 1800s. Dr. William Beaumont was only 25 at the time, and he was called to an accident in a trading store. A young man who was only 18 at the time, named Alexis St. Martin, had sustained a gunshot wound to the stomach. Dr. Beaumont assessed the young man and said he wouldn't live, but every day when he visited the hospital, Alexis St. Martin was healing. So Alexis St. Martin totally healed. But ever after, he had a little hole in his stomach. It was almost like an orifice, like a mouth, and it had a flap over it. And Dr. William Beaumont saw his opportunity. He would get a silk thread, he'd put a piece of food on it, and he'd put it in the stomach. 2 hours later, he'd pull it out and have a look, put it back in. 2 hours later, he'd have a look. And he meticulously documented his findings. In fact, his findings changed the nutrition world. So in the early 1800s, they thought digestion was more a mechanical process, but he showed it was a chemical process. And what fascinated me was there were 5 things that kept the food in the stomach 8 hours later, and that's what I want to look at. Food was still in the stomach after 8 hours, and that was overeating. Now that's probably not a surprise. Dr. Beaumont came to the conclusion that the stomach can only hold so much, and when we overeat, then it becomes very difficult for the digestive enzymes to break the food down because there's just too much in there. He also found that often eating, so that's eating every couple of hours. Whenever someone eats every couple of hours, it interferes with the previous digestion. And whenever a newcomer comes into the stomach, and maybe pyloric sphincter is opening, starting to let the previous meal through, it immediately shuts. It says, something's just come in and it's not breaking down, shut the gate. And it keeps the gate shut until the newcomer has been broken down, and then it'll start to open. But a couple of hours later, more comes in. Quick, shut the gate. That's why I never gave my children food between meals. I didn't know this at the time. I just didn't want to be in the kitchen all day. I had too much to do. So I fed them well. And I had a rule at the table, which was the rule when I was a little girl, but it's not at many tables now, that the children are not to leave the table until the meal is finished. Simple rule, great rule. Child leaves table, sorry, no more. Child doesn't seem to mind for a couple of hours. Then they get hungry. And they soon learn to sit and eat at the table. Then they eat well, they eat in peace, and then they can go the distance. Also, if Alexis St. Martin was stressed, if he was anxious, upset, Dr. Beaumont found that the digestion just did not happen the way it should. Now, I don't think that's a surprise to us. Large fluid with the meal. We've looked at this already. Large fluid with the meal, delayed digestion. Let me show you what happens. Remember, this should be an acid environment, so if a lot of fluid comes in, that starts to dilute the acidity. So what happens is digestion stops while the stomach starts to take that fluid out to bring the acidity back up and then resume back to digestion. That's why we should stop drinking about a half an hour before the meal and resume drinking about an hour and a half to 2 hours after the meal. The last one is alcohol. Whenever he had alcohol with the meal, digestion was delayed. These are the 5 things that Dr. William Beaumont found delayed digestion, and how many Americans and Australians do all of that? No wonder digestion in many people isn't happening well. I found it a fascinating book. He would take vials of digestive juice out, or, with a syringe and put it into vials, then he'd put a bit of rotten meat in. He found if he put a rotten meat into the digestive vial, within about 10-15 minutes, it had resolved it. In other words, people get food poisoning when they've got low hydrochloric acid. And there are so many people today that are suffering from reflux, which is the acids coming up here. So the doctor puts them on antacids. That don't make any sense at all. I'll give you an illustration. It's like shooting all the horses because they keep getting out of the open gate. Just shut the gate. There's no need to shoot the horses. Shut the gate. So how do we shut the gate? We eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and don't eat at night. If you do, make it a bowl of soup. Make sure when you sit to eat, it's a peaceful environment. Make sure you chew very well. Remember, there's no teeth in the stomach, there's no teeth anywhere else. This is the only place that we have the opportunity to chew. And you might remember one of the first things I said last night, or late yesterday afternoon, when we looked at the stomach. We have say over what goes in. We have say over how much goes in. Bucket loads or a cup. We have say over how long it's actually in the mouth. We have say over the environment of entry. So it's the only place we have say over is up here. And it affects all the way down. So we're moving on. We're moving on now through the pyloric sphincter to the duodenum. And the duodenum is the first part of the small intestine. And in the duodenum, we've got the bile duct from the gallbladder. Gallbladder is a reservoir for bile, coming down to the neck of the pancreas. And the liver releases the bile, and that starts the breakdown of the unsaturated fat. Then the pancreas releases pancreatic lipase, which further breaks down the unsaturated fat. The pancreas releases pancreatic amylase. Remember, ptyalin is a salivary amylase. This is pancreatic amylase. That's the enzyme that breaks down starch. Starch digestion began in the stomach, and it's finalised in the duodenum. The pancreas also releases, I've put trypsins, the trypsin and the chymotrypsin, which are the proteolytic enzymes that finalise the protein digestion. Let me show you. So this is protein, and in the stomach, under the action of pepsin, protein's broken down to peptides and polypeptides. Then the peptides and the polypeptides come down into the duodenum, and the trypsins break the peptides down into amino acids, the polypeptides down into peptides and amino acids, and also amino acids. That's the way God designed it to happen, and it's only as singular structures that it can be absorbed out of the gut and into the blood. But let me show you what's happening with many people. Hydrochloric acid levels are low. So not all the protein's getting broken down. So some whole proteins are ending up in the duodenum, and the pancreas says, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be broken down." "I'm so sorry, I'm not," but they're drinking with their meals, they're eating all day long, they're having their last meal, big meal at the end of the day, they're stressed all the time. Pancreas says, "We'll do what we can." And it might be able to bring some down to amino acids, but some it can only bring down to peptides and polypeptides. And all our food that we're going to access the nutrients out of is absorbed by halfway down the small intestine. And so these partially digested proteins can't be absorbed, so they end up coming into the large intestine, and the large intestine says, "What are you doing here?" He says, "Oh, we're sorry, but they're eating all day long, they're drinking with their meals. The trypsins did what they could, but they..." And the colon says, "Okay," so now the colon has to create extra bacteria to try and break it up somewhat or deal with it before it gets through, and that creates a lot of wind. There's your bloating. And you'll often find, I know this guy, he eats so fast, and he's always got wind. He's not chewing properly, and if you don't chew properly, can you see? Makes it hard all the way down. So you can have someone who's eating the best organic food, but they're not treating their gastrointestinal tract right, and they're not accessing it. And so now, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the grand finale of digestion. Lining the small intestine are villi. And these villi have the blood capillary network through them. And these villi, right up the middle of the villi, is the lacteal. This is part of the lymphatic system. But the most important part of digestion is influenced by gut flora. So when we were in our mother's wombs, our gut was sterile. But when we were born, we were literally showered with our mother's microorganisms. And if a mother has had antibiotics in her pregnancy, or even before she fell pregnant, she's had several courses, she can have compromised gut flora, and she will give a compromised gut flora to her baby. Breast milk does not come in for 3 days, and in the mother's breast for the first 3 days is a thick yellow substance called colostrum, and that's also rich in microorganisms. We touched on this when we looked at the immune system. A dairy farmer was telling me that if they have a cow that dies in childbirth, or calf birth, maybe you call it, they'll often put that calf down because it will never ever be very strong because it doesn't get the colostrum. Or he said what we sometimes do, if possible, we squeeze the teats out of the dead cow into the little calf just so it'll get that colostrum. Or he said if another cow has just given birth to a calf, then we'll put that calf on there. But if we feed that calf, the bought milk or just cow's milk from another cow, not colostrum, he said that cow will never be strong, will never be healthy. How many humans are missing out on that colostrum? And so when the baby takes in that gut flora from the mother, it creates a thick turf wall. Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, in her book Gut and Psychology, she calls it a thick turf wall. And now, this is where the final digestion happens, under the action of that thick turf wall, which is made up of the healthy bacteria and flora. One lady said, I've got candida. I said, congratulations, we all have. And it's not a problem when it's under the control of the bacteria. It's that perfect balance. And there are actually about 12 different species of candidas. So this gut flora is responsible for the final breakdown. Well, doesn't the breakdown happen with the enzymes, if we've just looked at? It does, but what is specifically broken down and released are your vitamin Bs. A similar process happens by converting cabbage to sauerkraut. You've got that same bacterial action, the lactobacillus releases more B vitamins. This gut flora is responsible for the absorption of the nutrients out of the gut and into the blood. These microbes are responsible for protecting the blood against any harmful pathogens. We touched on this when we looked at the immune system. These microorganisms are responsible for the nourishment of the cells that line the gastrointestinal tract. No wonder Hippocrates said all disease begins in the gut. So this gut flora is of the most importance, as you can see. So what we need to know is, well, what breaks it down? Antibiotics break it down. I'm not against antibiotics, they save lives. But if we understand natural therapies, and if we act on a wound or act on a problem immediately with natural remedies, we should never get to antibiotics. My son James, he works out, and he'd been overworking his arms, and he got what you call bursitis. What's bursitis? That burst of that fluid around the elbow, itis, inflamed. So he went to the doctor. Doctor said, yeah, you've got bursitis, take this antibiotic. And James said something that I don't think he's ever heard. James said, I've never taken an antibiotic in my life and I'm not about to start. Do you think that doctor's ever heard that? So he went home and rang Mum. I said, it's joint inflammation, do ginger. And he said, that got it down. One writer explained antibiotics like this. They said it's like dropping an atomic bomb in the gut. What did the atomic bomb do? It killed the good and the bad alike. Statin drugs they're your cholesterol-lowering medication, and as I showed you yesterday, there's no need to take cholesterol-lowering medication because cholesterol's not the problem. You see that? Pain-killing medication. When I was in Idaho in 2021, I met a man who'd been on very heavy pain-killing medication after an accident. I think it was on a motorboat skiing. And the medicine did the best they could. I think he was mid-40s at the time, but he was in so much pain. And after a couple of years, he realised he had to do something. He was on heavy medication. It got to the point where it wasn't doing it. His family almost left him because when he was in pain, he was very difficult to live with. So he made a decision to change his life. And a few things happened in his life. He saw some DVDs that just turned him around. He surrendered his life to God, and he knew God had a plan for him. And he started to eat better. He started to exercise. He was a dentist, so he knew anatomy and physiology, and he knew that all the core muscles, they're all connected to the spine. Now, he had an injury that he was going to have to manage for the rest of his life. And when I met him in 2021, he said, I work out for 1 hour every lunchtime. And he said, and I cycle for half an hour every evening. And he said, I have no pain. Isn't that incredible? So a lot of people, if they, ask me, what can I do? I've got a bulging disc. I say, you've got to start strengthening the core. All that. They were just hoping I'd say, take this herb and all your problems will go. That's what they're hoping. But that long-term painkiller was also slaughtering his gut, which was interfering with his immune system. Can you see this causes this, and then this causes this, and What also is refined sugar. Refined sugar feeds the candidas and can knock off the lactobacillus, causing that imbalance. So let me show you what happens here. So this cell here will magnify him. This cell is a very happy cell because that gut flora is nourishing him. This cell from here is a very unhappy cell because there's no gut flora to nourish him. And when a person were to eat wheat or dairy, the wheat breaks down to caseomorphine. The dairy breaks down to caseomorphine. So what's morphine? It's an opiate derivative. And the gluten breaks down to glutomorphine. And there are a couple of books that explain this in detail that you can read if you'd like to know more. That's in Gut and Psychology by Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride, but also Grain Brain by a neurologist named Dr. David Perlmutter. So what happens is, let's say that this is caseomorphine and this is glutomorphine. So caseomorphine comes along here, and this healthy gut flora knocks off the morphine, so the only thing that gets in is caseo. And glutomorphine comes along, and this healthy gut flora can knock off the morphine, so only gluto gets through. But if caseomorphine comes here and glutomorphine comes here, this gut flora, because it's not nourished, it cannot knock off the morphine. So glutomorphine and caseomorphine get into the blood. They go up to the brain, opiate receptor sites pick it up, and it can actually contribute to mental illness. In his book, Grain Brain, Dr. David Perlmutter, he quotes a psychiatrist who takes his schizophrenic people off wheat and dairy, 50% improvement. Dr. Bruce Fife says exactly the same thing in his book Stop Autism Now and Stop Alzheimer's Now. You take them off the wheat and the dairy, 50% improvement. But it was Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, she goes into greater detail and shows what I've just shown you here. How important is our gut flora? And so what medicine has acknowledged the importance of the gut flora, and they've come up with a solution. It's called fecal transplant. Have you heard of it? And I was watching a documentary on the gut, that great documentary that's been banned now, and they went into this laboratory where they had a blender and they had feces from a healthy person in the blender. I'm sure that's the only thing they use the blender for. And then they put it into this large syringe, and then they put the person under general anaesthetic, and they give them a colonoscopy where they're able to plunge the healthy feces into the person with gut problems. It only cost $10,000 to have the procedure. And I had a man ring me up. He said, "My daughter's got irritable bowel. Can you help her?" I said, "I believe so. Is she willing?" I always ask, "Is she willing?" "Well, we're working on her." Doesn't sound too promising. He said, 6 months ago, I paid for her to have a fecal transplant. She's 18. She wants to eat whatever she wants. She wants to eat sugar and junk. I said, "Oh." He said, and she got a bad cold and had to go on a course of antibiotics, and we're back to square one. What's a lot cheaper and what's within the reach of each one of us is to know how the body works and give the body the conditions that it requires for healing. So if we've started from the stomach down, from the mouth down, giving the body all the right conditions, then our nutrients are being absorbed. What can you do if you've already sustained damage in the gut flora? You can take probiotics. Ideally get a plant probiotic. Ideally take this 3/4 of an hour before breakfast so that it goes all the way down here. And include cultured foods. Kefir, you can do milk kefir. Kefir can be made with coconut milk. It can be made with organic soy milk. You can also do water kefir. If you do water kefir, it grows on something like coconut sugar. It needs a sugar to grow on. I used to make it all the time, and I'd strain it out and put grated ginger in it, and I had my own healthy ginger beer because it's got like a fizz to it. But unfortunately, I travel so much I can't maintain that. But there's websites, water kefir. You can have a look at that. Yogurts, you can make very nice yogurts on coconut milk, organic soy milk. You can even buy almond yogurt now, can't you? Sauerkraut, cultured cabbage, miso. I don't use Turilla's yeast or brewer's yeast in anything. It does give a flavour, but you can use miso instead of the brewer's yeast, and that gives them quite a nice flavour. So start to investigate your cultured foods. What about sourdough bread? Well, because it's baked, you're not getting any healthy bacteria left, but you're eating a pre-digested grain that is basically been broken down because of the original gut flora. And so now we travel down and we're coming through to the large intestine, and there's a little double valve there, and that double valve is called the ileocecal valve. It's a double valve because we don't want anything from the colon going back into the small intestine. But notice we've got something else down here. It's called the appendix. And you know God doesn't make mistakes. And the appendix is not a mistake. The appendix is an important part of the colon. The appendix has two main roles. One is it is the colon's oil can, so it lubricates the contents of the colon to help it move through and out. The second function of the appendix is to release antibacterial fluid. Because if what's coming out of here is toxic, why would it be toxic? Dogs can get away with meat because their gut, their gastrointestinal tract, is 1 yard long. Ours is 8.5 yards long. So they can get away with eating meat, number one, because they've got 10 times the hydrochloric acid, and number two, because it's quite short. It's in and out. I'm a gardener. I love compost bins, but I do not want dog droppings in my compost bin. But I'm very happy to put the horse and the cow and the goat and the sheep droppings into my compost bins because they're vegetarian animals. See, when meat breaks down, it putrefies. And the putrefaction process is toxic. So when someone's eating meat, what comes out of here is often quite toxic. Especially if they're having a sugar dessert, having wine, having coffee, all of that. If a person has a small amount of meat and has a lot of vegetables, that certainly can move it through and calm down the process a little bit. Most people that have appendicitis, it's because the poor appendix is just overdone because what's coming out of here is so toxic. And then we move through the large colon, and really all that should be left is cellulose fibre that cannot be digested. And that's very important because what that does is that sweeps and cleans the colon and stimulates peristalsis all through the colon. One lady said to me, "Barbara, I eat my meal and then I have to go straight to the toilet and I lose it again." I said, "No, you're not losing it. You're probably losing 2 meals ago." Because most people would have 2, maybe 3 meals in their gastrointestinal tract. Breakfast, and if you had supper the night before, there might be a little there about to come out, and then the meal before that, maybe a little bit in the small intestine. But what certainly speeds up movement is when the body is well hydrated, because one of the main functions of the colon is to take water out so stools are formed. And if someone's dehydrated, more water gets taken out than should be taken out. If someone's on a refined diet, a high meat, high refined diet, this can be very sluggish. There's no fibre in meat. And there's no fibre in all your refined foods like white bread, white rice. What did one health writer say? The whiter your bread, the sooner you're dead. So we need to move this system through the body. I've got a book at the home called The Second Brain. It's on the colon. The colon, of course, does not obey us, but the colon is influenced by many things. And here are some of the things that influence the colon. Water, absolutely. When we're dehydrated, the colon certainly slows down because it dries out. We also should promptly answer nature's immediate call. Got that? When the body says go, you got to go. We're so very glad that in the anatomy of the colon, God put a muscle, and this muscle holds up that last part of the colon. It's called puborectalis, and we're very glad for that muscle. But unfortunately, many people use that muscle because they're they're busy on the phone and they need to go, but they want to finish the phone call, or they're watching a movie and they don't want to stop watching the movie, or they're reading a book and they want to keep reading and get to the last bit. Or they're not crises. But if the body says go, you got to go. And what happens if you feel to go is that this last part of the colon fills up and then you get that pressure to go. But if you don't go, and praise God we have the ability to stop, then what is in this part of the colon falls back into that part of the colon. It can't stay there, because if it stays there, it puts a huge amount of pressure to the point where if that continues to stay there, the anal sphincter gets weak, and we don't want accidents, and or huge amount of pressure. Something's got to give. Hemorrhoids start. Very, very painful. When I worked in the operating theatre, sometimes I would assist in hemorrhoidectomies, where they would put a suture or stitch line around the base of the hemorrhoid and just cut it off. And I think, oh, how are they going to feel when they wake up? Nothing to how they're going to feel when they do their first bowel movement, which is probably going to be hard because they're on painkillers, which is drying out the colon. Let's just look after our gastrointestinal tract so we never have to get to such a state. And remember, if you don't listen to the first whisper, the body will start screaming at you. And when the body starts screaming at you, that's when it's doing damage. Listen to the body. What also the colon needs, it needs fibre. And the best fibre foods are vegetables. Yes, fruit, but if someone is conquering candida, if someone is diabetic, they need to reduce the fruit somewhat. Fibre gently stimulates peristalsis, and fibre also sweeps out the contents of the colon. Position. What do I mean by position? Let me draw a picture of someone doing their daily evacuation on the throne. Here's the throne. And they are sitting on the throne. When a person's in the sitting position, puborectalis remains tight. It remains up. Now, things can get through, but if they put a little stool before the throne, or if they buy a squatty potty, so that the knees are up in the squatting position, when the knees are up in the squatting position, puborectalis relaxes. And when puborectalis relaxes, the colon opens up and the contents can be passed with the greatest of ease. Also in the squatting position, all the pressure's taken off the anus. So if someone has hemorrhoids, it's very important they go into the squatting position. If you want to prevent hemorrhoids, buy a little stool or buy the squatty potty to go round, and you can prevent it. The worst thing you can do is strain, especially in this position, because then all the pressure is put on the anus. That weakens the anal sphincter, and it also, something's got to give, and there's your hemorrhoids. The colon also needs you to exercise. When you exercise, you not only increase blood supply to the colon, when you exercise, the colon moves. So on your morning walk, your colon's moving. If you're on the rebounder, every time you jump, the colon is getting strengthened. The Pilates type exercises, those core strengthening exercises. Did you do your push-ups this morning? Sorry, I didn't hear. Every day we should do push-ups. I was in a hurry today, I only did 20 today. If you can't do push-ups, start on the wall. Ladies, you can do ladies push-ups. Men, if you're not able to do push-ups, start with the ladies. You know the ladies' push-ups are on your knees rather than just on your feet. Can't even do that? Start on the wall. This upper body needs to be strengthened, but push-ups strengthen your core muscles. When my sons came to visit between Christmas and New Year, they'd taken up the challenge of 500 push-ups a day. I think they did 20 every hour. Yeah, not all at once. You like the next one. I like the next one. Laughter. Proverbs 17:22, I should say, says, "A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit dries up the bones." I've had this lady emailing me about her daughter. She said, "I'm so worried, we're going to emergency every week." I said, "Why are you doing that?" "Well, I'm so worried." "Well, what are you worried about?" "Send me a photo of your child." Beautiful looking child. I said, I think your problem is worry. And I've got some good news. You don't have to go there anymore. She told me what a child's eating. I said, it's time to laugh. It's time to go to the park and swing with your daughter on the swings, jump with her on the trampoline. You know what kids love? They love it when you get on the trampoline with them. Wrestle with them. They love it. Ride bikes with them. I said, play ball with her. It's time to relax. It's time to laugh. Life should be good. The Proverbs 17:22 says, "A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit dries up the bones." Well, I'd like to suggest that a broken spirit dries up the colon. It's time to relax. One lady said to me, it just really annoys me that my husband takes a book and he goes into the toilet for half an hour. I said, you got to get a book and you got to go in there for half an hour. Maybe at a different time. Relax. Relax. It's such a fast society today. It's so important to take time to relax. So that's what the colon needs. So what can you do if a person has constipation? What can you do if a person's not going every day? Implement the things that I've just shown you. And also castor oil compresses. Castor oil compresses over the colon. The castor oil penetrates very deep and can help break things up and start moving things along. If someone says to me, but I'm exercising every day, I'm drinking lots of water, I'm eating a plant-based diet, well, that tells me that now we've got to change the habit patterns of the colon, because the colon can get into a habit. So there are some herbs you can take, but one, and this is probably one of the easiest to do, is that make a chia seed gel. Now, chia can take up about 25% of its body weight in water. So if we get, say, a 250 ml, that'd be an 8-ounce glass jar, and you put barely, probably half an inch in the bottom and fill it with water and then shake. Probably got to shake for 5 minutes. And then pour that all over your fruit in the morning. How much do you have? Well, if you've got a very stubborn colon, you might drink half a cup. You might drink, in fact, you can't overdo it. But that's very cheap medicine. But we have a tea that we use at our retreat. It's 1 part cascara sagrada. It's 2 part licorice, the root licorice, and it's 3 part buckthorn. Buckthorn is a bark, and it is also a relative of the cascara. So cascara and buckthorn are barks. Licorice is a root. So what you do is you mix that they're all dried herbs that you would mix in a jar. And then the recipe is 1 teaspoon to 1 cup of water. And you do a gentle simmer, always a very gentle simmer. A gentle simmer for 10 minutes. What's the dose? Well, when guests come to our retreat and we ask them questions about, we usually use this as our guide. How are you sleeping? How much water do you drink in a day? Tell us what you're eating. Do you have tea, coffee? Do you... And then and we always say, how many bowel movements do you do a day? And if someone says, 2 or 3, we don't usually give them any tea at night. You see, the first 2 days are juicing days. In my 3 o'clock lecture this afternoon, I'll be showing you the juicing program that we give our guests when we look at the liver detox. Well, so when you don't have any solid food for 2.5 days, often people need a bit of help to get their bowels working. And so we give them a tea. But if they usually go 3 times a day to the toilet, they don't usually need it. And if they say, I go once a day, we give them half a cup. If they go every 2 days, we give them 1 cup. If they go every 3 days, we usually give them a cup in the morning and a cup about the middle of the day. So can you see it depends on you, depends on your colon, depends on what it needs. And we had a psychologist do our program. She was in her 60s. She said, I go once a week with help. So we had castor oil compresses on her abdomen. She was having 3 cups of this tea a day. So 1 teaspoon of those dried herbs you cook with 1 cup of water. So you make a tea. Looks like coffee, doesn't taste like coffee. These two, this is very bitter, this is not so bitter, that's quite sweet. So it's a bittersweet tea. So we gave her a cup in the morning, a cup in the middle of the day, and a cup before she went to bed at night. And within 24 hours, she was going twice a day. She was so excited. By the end of the week, the whites of her eyes had become white. They were almost grey. The skin on her face had a grey look. It became pink. She said, my mind is so clear. She said, maybe this is the problem with most of my patients. What is she, a psychologist? She got back to me about what happened. So big lifestyle change, stopped her coffee, stopped her nightly red wine, started to drink more water, plant-based diet. She said, when I got home, I took the 3 cups a day, morning, middle of the day, evening, and I was going twice a day. She said, after 6 weeks, I started going 4 times a day. So what does she do? Brings it back to 2 cups a day. And she was going twice a day. After 6 weeks, she started going 4 times a day. What does she do now? Brings it back to 1 cup a day. See, you're the doctor. And if the body speaks, listen. And when it started going 4 times a day, what was her body telling her? You can reduce now. These herbs gently stimulate and revive colon function. Because some people start implementing Sustain Me and they're still not going. So that tells me that the colon's in a habit and we've got to change the habit. She said to me that after, I think it was 5 months, she wasn't taking any tea and she was going twice a day. Isn't that good news? But she had to be regular and consistent to be able to get those results. She's probably one of the most severe cases we've seen. So what can you do for hemorrhoids? Because when someone has constipation, it's not uncommon that they have hemorrhoids because of the weight there. Well, again, implement the lifestyle, the diet, and castor oil compresses. And there are a couple of suppositories that they can make. One suppository is an aloe vera gel, because I'm pretty sure you can buy big fat leaves of aloe vera. Yeah. Or you might grow them. You cut the gel inside the leaf, about the size of the little finger, and you freeze it. And then just before bed, you insert it into the anus, as far as it will go. Don't leave it near the opening, it has to be pushed right in. That's one suppository. Another suppository that can be tried is you moisten a cotton wool with castor oil, mould it into the shape of the little finger and freeze it. It will take 3 days to freeze. And just before bed at night, insert the castor oil suppository. So what you can do is aloe one night, castor oil the other night, and just see the result. What about irritable bowel? What about gastritis? What about Crohn's disease? They basically are all inflammation of the gastrointestinal tract. And we have found no matter what the classification is, it always responds to what I'm about to share with you. The 5 common allergens are almost like kerosene to a fire on an irritated colon. So what must stop? What must stop is peanuts. Remember, they're commonly contaminated with mold. Dairy, wheat, oats, and refined sugar. And sometimes people look at this and they say, well, what am I going to eat? You've just taken away my main food. My response to that is, well, this is one of the reasons why you're not healing. It is true that a lot of people eat this food and they don't have irritable bowel. That's true. But if there is an irritation in there, these foods will irritate it more. And so they can have almond butter or cashew butter. They can have organic soy milk. They can have Tristan's bread, simple needs. They can have millet porridge, or they can have buckwheat, rice porridge. And of course there are so many, maple syrup. My daughter sent me a photo this morning of the maple syrup she made. I think, was it 45 gallons to get 1 gallon? But in Wisconsin at the moment, the weather's perfect for the sap's starting to run in the trees. So those natural sugars. So that must stop. And the herbs and the slippery elm. We've talked about slippery elm a couple of times. Slippery elm is the powdered bark of the slippery elm tree, and it coats, soothes and heals the lining of the gut. You put water with it, it goes thick. If it's too thick to drink, put a bit more water in it. So when we're giving it to someone, they're standing in front of us and we say, "Are you ready?" Then we pour the hot water in, mix, drink. Because if you mix it and sit it there, it'll go very thick and you'll eat it with a spoon, and you might not mind eating it with a spoon. You just have it the way you can. If someone has diarrhea to the point that they're going 10 times a day, they might take that every half hour. And then as it slows down, then they ease back on the slippery elm. So we had a young man, he was about 40. to our program. He was from Kenya, and he had severe irritable bowel. He'd had it for about 10 years, and when I looked at his diet, yep, here it was. And he was on cortisone. He was on 20 milligrams of cortisone a day, and he was on anti-inflammatories. He's a very quiet man. He was going about 4 or 5 times a day to the toilet, so we gave him Slipperyom 4 times a day. 8 o'clock in the morning, midday, 6 o'clock at night, and just before he went to bed. So he came in on Sunday, and the first 2 days are juicing. So we serve fresh vegetable and fruit juices every 2 hours, which I'll show you in the next lecture. So at the end of Monday, I said, "How are things?" And in the Kenyan culture, you don't talk about these things. But it was important that I know. And he'd just say to me, "Good." I said, "Are you still bleeding from the colon?" "No." "Are you still getting cramping?" "No." And his smile told me. Next day, I asked him again, "Good." So on Wednesday, when he started to eat, we could tell this man was happy because the smile didn't come off his face. I said, "I think you can stop your anti-inflammatories." I said, "I have no authority over your medication, but if I were you, because everything's settling down, no more bleeding, no more cramping." And when he started eating on the Wednesday, the stool started to have form. So he stopped his anti-inflammatories. Now, if the response after that was starting to have more diarrhea, we've got a choice. You can go back on anti-inflammatories, or sometimes people go back on half dose, or we can just give more Slipperyom, which is what I would have done. But no reaction. Praise God. What an amazing body we live in. He was an incredibly happy man when he went home, and also at the health retreat, learning the alternatives to these foods. So I said to him, "Because you're going so well, I think you could start to reduce your cortisone. 20 milligrams of cortisone, you cannot stop that. What he has to do is go to 15 milligrams, maybe 2 weeks later, 10 milligrams, maybe 2 weeks later, 5 milligrams. So just very, very slowly has to come off the cortisone. You come off that too quickly, then you get this inflammatory response in the body. We had another lady come, and she attended a lecture I did in New Zealand on Tuesday night. She said, "I've had irritable bowel for 30 years. And she listened to a lecture similar to this. She said, "No one told me that these foods irritate." Well, remember what I said, if your colon's not irritated, they won't irritate it. But if it's an irritated colon, it will. So stop this. She said, "I'm stopping straight away." She said, "In fact, as soon as you finish your lecture, I'm going via the supermarket and I'm going to get some alternatives." And the next day she went to the health food shop and bought Slipperyom. And she started having that 4 times a day. So this was Tuesday night. Thursday night she came to me. Now this lady's in her mid-70s. She's had this for 30 years. She had a big smile on her face. She said, "I'm not bleeding from the colon anymore." She said, "The cramping stopped." How quickly the body starts to respond. Very quickly. It always takes a bit longer if someone's on medication. So if someone's on medication, you just implement this, and as you start to see the response, then you can ease off the medication. Some people who are on, say, 10 milligram tablets for the cortisone, they'll ask the doctor to prescribe them 5 milligram tablets. Some doctors will work with you on this, but some people choose to do it themselves. And if someone goes down from 20 to 10 milligrams and there's a reaction, I say, well, just go back on half dose. But you play with it You're the only one, your body's the only one that can tell you what to do with that. Does that mean the person can never eat this again? My suggestion is keep away from it from at least a year. Let the body heal. And then try a bit. Who'll tell you? Your body. One man said, I can have half a slice of wheat bread once a week. Any more than that, and I get a reaction. So see what you're doing? You're listening. You're listening. But at first, when you want healing to happen, you've got to be very strict. Very strict. And of course, I say to people, what do you want out of this? What are you prepared to do? And if you're prepared to do this, you will get results. So with someone who's got very chronic inflammation in their colon, we have another mix, and we call this gut repair. And we find this even more effective than the slippery elm. And the gut repair mix is 8 parts slippery elm, 1 part golden seal. Remember golden seal, king of tonics to all mucous membranes. And 1 part myrrh. The myrrh is a gum resin, and we buy it in little lumps, and we blend it in little coffee grinders. And the golden seal must be a powder, and of course this is a powder, so you mix the powders together. And the dose is 1 teaspoon in half a cup of hot water. Slippery elm is quite a nice taste, but once you put golden seal and myrrh in, it becomes a little bitter. But I had one lady who got great results with the gut repair, and she ran out, so she went to slippery elm. She said, slippery elm's not doing what the gut repair did. Yes?
Excuse me, but what did you say the mix for that is? 1 teaspoon?
The dose, if someone was to take this, is the same dose for slippery elm, which is 1 teaspoon, I should say, and it's about half a cup of hot water. If it's too thick, add a little bit more water. Yeah? When do you take it? Usually before each meal and before bed. But if someone's going 10 times a day to the toilet, they might just take it every hour. You can't overdo it. And when you start to see the response, then you back off a little bit.
Can you take the myrrh as essential oil?
Can you take the myrrh as an essential oil? I guess you could. You could put a drop of myrrh into a cup of slippery elm. You could try that. So I'll tell you one more story, and then we'll start taking questions. We had a couple attend our program, and they were both in their early 70s. And I said to the man, what's your reason for coming? I always asked for their reason for coming. He said, I'm just here to support my wife. And then I started to ask him questions. And I found out that he'd had Crohn's disease for many years. And the doctor recently said there was no more they could do for him. And he was on anti-inflammatories and he was on cortisone. I think he was on about 30 milligrams a day. And when I asked him what he had for breakfast, he has toast with cheese on it. Cheese is a shocking food for the poor colon. And a cup of coffee with sugar and milk. And mid-morning he'd have another cup of coffee and he'd have a couple of sugar biscuits. So the sugar biscuits, there's the sugar and there's the wheat and the dairy. What do you have for lunch? Sandwich, white bread, ham and cheese, another cup of coffee, sugar biscuit. Afternoon, cup of coffee, sugar biscuit. In the evening, he has a steak and he has ice cream for dessert and has a couple of Jack Daniels every night. Can you see what his food was just feeding that situation. So I said, can I try a few things? He said, oh, if you want. So we gave him the gut repair 4 times a day. He told me that he walks every morning and he lives in a seaside town. He said, and I know where all the toilets are, because he said, on my half-hour morning walk, I have to stop 4 times, and I know exactly where the toilets are. So at the end of the first day, how are things? He said, all the bleeding stopped. All the cramping stopped. Now, this is still on medication. This is happening. End of the second day, he was a very happy man. No bleeding, no cramping. Wednesday, they started eating food. He started to get form in his stool. He was just used to liquid stools. That's what he'd lived with for years. On the last day, he came running up to me, because Michael and I have breakfast with the guests on the last day. He said, I've just gone on a morning walk and I haven't gone. That was huge for him, because, you know, he has to usually go 4 times. Do I have to tell that man, now don't go back on the alcohol? Do I have to say that? No. I'll leave it with him. It's his life. But he now knows how he can conquer this. And with him too, I said to him, if I were you, I'd stop the anti-inflammatories midweek, because his body was going so well. He stopped the anti-inflammatories, no reaction. I said the next step, I would start easing off that cortisone, 5 milligrams at a time usually. I haven't met anyone who likes being on medication. So how nice to have alternatives to the medication. And so ends our journey through the gastrointestinal tract. Are there any questions?
What's the SE? I'm sorry.
Slippery elm.
Oh, same as above.
Slippery elm. So with the gut repair, it's 8 parts slippery elm, 1 part golden seal, and 1 part myrrh. Yes?
If the stools are very diarrhea and very yellow, does that have anything to do?
Okay, so the question is if stools are diarrhea and yellow, usually pale stools indicate that there's a problem with the liver, unless they're drinking a lot of carrot juice, and then it goes yellow. Yes?
The fact that it's very yellow, distinctively yellow, does that mean bile is involved?
It could be. Bile is usually more green, but it sounds like more of a liver thing. So we've got microphones happening now.
Yeah, regarding the constipation remedy, when do you take that?
So with the tea for constipation, usually before you go to bed at night, and then in the morning, there's usually a result.
I have another question. When you said taking the probiotic, how much time before to take that?
An hour and a half before breakfast.
Okay.
I had a doctor recently, unbelievably, tell me you cannot get enough fiber in food. So how would you answer him in terms of what, if you needed the maximum amount of fiber, what that would be? And then the second question is, if the pyloric sphincter is open in the morning, if you take supplements in the morning, do they go, what happens?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll do the supplement one first. My son-in-law works with a man that works in sewage. He said you would not believe the tablets that come out in sewage.
Oh.
This is medical and herbal, because you need hydrochloric acid to break the tablet down. You need hydrochloric acid to break the capsule down. And when is hydrochloric acid strongest in the stomach? At meals. So supplements should always be taken with the meal. Except, as I said, the probiotic, you take that 3/4 of an hour before breakfast. If it's in a capsule, you can empty the capsule out and mix it with water. Oh, second part.
The second part was,
Oh, not enough fibre.
what's a maximum, if you want to maximize your fiber, what would you do?
If you want to maximise your fibre, you eat a lot of vegetables, eat a lot of fruit, eat the whole grains. Everything in the plant kingdom has fibre. And that chia gel tipped all over your breakfast, that gel does wonders for your colon. I've heard my husband say this a few times when a doctor says something like that. My husband says, I don't believe him. Now, do you know, it hardly comes into a human being's brain not to believe the doctor, is that right? Now, I'm not anti-doctor, I've got some good friends that are doctor. There are some good painters, some bad painters, good plumbers, bad plumbers. It's like with every profession. But remember, their word is not law. It is an opinion. And that's why it's a good idea to get a few opinions. But I'm a government certified nutritionist, so I've studied nutrition, and there is lots of fibre in the plant kingdom.
So there's a slippery elm bark and a leaf. So which one do you
So a
suggest?
slippery elm bark in a leaf, the only way you could really have that would be maybe to boil it, then take the leaf out and drink the thick mix, or blend the leaf to a powder.
So you suggest the bark or both?
Well, slippery elm powder is the bark.
The bark. Oh, they come in the leaf also. They also, and it's cheaper.
Okay. Well, I guess you'd try both and see what works the best.
Oh, I have a question. If somebody had a colon cancer surgery, a tumor removed, is that tea good to use after that Sagrada Cascada and then
So
buckthorn?
they've had the gallbladder removed.
No. Colon cancer.
Oh, colon cancer, yeah. I did meet one lady, she'd had her whole colon cut out.
Wow.
And her body was working quite well. I don't suggest you have it cut out, but I'm amazed at the body's ability to adapt and adjust. In fact, if it didn't adapt and adjust, most people would already be dead, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Is that tea good to use? That
You
that
can
recipe?
try.
Yeah.
Which tea? This one?
Well, no. Before it was buckthorn, licorice.
Well, you'd only use that tea if you had constipation.
Okay.
I have a question. There's some supplements that they say to take on an empty stomach. What are you supposed to do? Take them with food still?
I'd probably have a look at what they were, but that's, I think you'll agree with me, that's common sense. What's going to break the tablet down? Only hydrochloric acid will, and it's only active at meal times.
Okay. Sometimes I chew up the tablet. Will that make it digest better? It still needs hydrochloric acid?
Certainly will. So you could take it on an empty stomach just before you eat your meal.
Okay, so you're supposed to wait like an hour. Is that?
Pardon?
You're supposed to wait an hour before you eat.
Okay, I wonder why. I'd be interested to know what that supplement was. The only one I know to take before a meal would be the probiotic.
Yeah, it's recommended to take zinc and L-lysine on empty stomach.
Oh, really?
You told your son to do Gija for his bursitis. What is Gija?
Ginger.
Oh, ginger. Thank you.
Sorry, I've got this strange accent.
How would he do ginger for his elbow?
You grate ginger up and put it in a cloth, make the little poultice and put it on, then cover it with plastic, then bandage it on.
We love all your special words.
Yes, on the constipation recipe for the tea, where you say you take 2 parts of licorice and 3 parts of buckhorn, and you take 1 teaspoon each with 1 cup of water.
You buy those herbs, And in a jar, you mix it in those proportions.
Well, I,
1 part cascara, 2 part licorice, 3 part buckthorn. You mix them in a jar in those proportions,
No,
and then
I-
you take a teaspoon of those mixed herbs and boil them with the water.
I understand that. But my question is, does the 1 teaspoon, no, I'm sorry, not 1 teaspoon, but whenever you talk about 2 parts, are you saying like, when you're going to make the mixture, do you take like 1 teaspoon of cascara and then 2 teaspoons of the licorice and 3 teaspoons of the buckhorn, and you mix all that together? Is that what you mean by parts? 3 parts, 2 parts?
No, you buy those herbs as dried herbs, and you get a big jar, and you put them into that big jar in those proportions, mix it well, take a teaspoon of that and put it with the water and cook it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the part could be a teaspoon, the part could be a cup, the part could be a bucket. It's just the proportion.
The ratio.
Okay.
Yeah, ratio.
Okay, that's fine. She'll explain it to me. Thank you.
Okay, so my question is on seeds. It's me back here. So chia seed, the chia gel is a wonderful thing, it sounds like, but is it okay, especially for people with these colon symptoms, these inflammations, diverticulitis or losis, for instance, as well as the other ones you've mentioned, to eat chia seed without soaking it, or should that always be soaked?
If someone has diverticulitis, they should soak it.
Okay, and should we always be soaking seeds? Are they best assimilated that way, or just
Not necessarily.
just with the colon issues?
The flaxseed can be ground.
Uh-huh.
The chia seed, because it takes up so much water, and the soaking of it helps to soften that seed so that when it gets into your gut, it's very easy to break down.
Mm-hmm. I often will sprinkle pumpkin seed, hemp seed, and chia seed on my salad or on my cereal. And so I was just wondering if I should be hydrating the seeds first or not.
Not necessarily.
Okay. I don't have colon issues, but
Okay.
yeah, for those who do. Thank you.
I'm not sure who's got the microphone there. Yeah?
About slippery elm tea, it comes in a powder, as far as I know, using it for the last 2 years. And somebody told me to boil it for about 20 minutes. Is that okay?
Oh, I never do.
Oh, because it's like a hard powder. It's very...
Well, the powder we have is very soft. And when you pour the hot water onto it, it goes like a soft gel. But you know what? You do what you want.
But if you boil it so long, doesn't destroy the good
No.
elements from the tree, from the
No.
tea?
No.
And, okay, that's it.
I have a question regarding those of us who were in Vietnam and got exposed to Agent Orange. Is that ever going to get out of our systems, sort of like the COVID stuff, the vaccines? Or is this something we're just going to end up having to live with the rest of our lives? And if there is a way to get rid of it, how do we do it?
No, there's nothing like the COVID vaccine. The COVID vaccine is like none other in the way it has ability to tamper with our DNA. But it's a good question. In my 3 o'clock lecture, I'm going to be talking about the liver, and I'm going to show you how the liver detoxifies us from things like Agent Orange.
I don't know if you're familiar with bentonite clay. And when I have a really severe GI attack, I have drunk bentonite clay. But other times I have found aloe vera juice from the inner fillet. And if I take some slippery elm with that, it works wonders.
Yeah, the aloe in some ways is very similar to the slippery elm. It coats, soothes, heals, also has a growth stimulant.
I was wondering if you could talk about the castor oil poultice on the abdomen. How long do you leave that on?
Usually with the castor oil, you would wear that for about at least 5 hours a day. And you can use it on constipation, and a person can also use it if they've got irritable bowel.
For slippery elm with just hot water, how much slippery elm?
It's usually a teaspoon.
Okay, thank you. To 1 cup?
Well,
Yeah.
you can try half a cup, but if it's still too thick, put a bit more water in it. Depends how generous your teaspoon is, I guess.
I have a friend that wants to know what causes cysts in the body, and what can you do for liver and kidney cysts?
What causes cysts in the body? We are exposed to so many environmental poisons today, and some of them we've put into our body, and some of them, it's inevitable that they have come into our body, and the body reacts in different ways with different people. So it's not an easy one to answer why are the cysts there. But the good news is we know how to get rid of them, and that is the castor oil compresses. The castor oil, they won't take it away overnight. How long will it take to take them away? Depends how long they've been there, and of course a person might not know how long they've been there. I've never had a scan on my liver, and I've never had a scan on my kidney, and there might be cysts there. I don't know, but I'm really not too worried about it because everything works. But I've seen people who everything works, they've had a scan, and now they're all worried because a small cyst was found. And I said, don't worry about it. There might be one on mine, I don't know. But unless it starts interfering with your body functions, then of course you take steps.
Also, I have a niece, she's 30. She has a benign tumor near her pituitary gland, and she did get vaccinated, so it's possible it was from that. But is there anything she can do to detox besides like zinc or anything like that to help someone like that?
Well, the castor oil is very good, and there is a herb that's called a herbal scalpel because of its ability to cut away tumours, and it's red clover. And you can have a litre of red clover tea a day, or you can take it in a supplement form.
So my question is, the cascara, does your body develop like a tolerance if you take it too much and then your colon wouldn't work?
Well, what we found with this lady that had severe constipation going once a week, she was on it every day, 3 times a day for, I think probably 5 months, and she didn't need to take it anymore. I think it's important to also not just be taking the herbs, but be implementing all of this. Go to your plant-based diet, get the common allergens out. You've got to do the whole part.
For somebody that's, as a nurse, completely impacted with fecal matter, then you're starting to get the plug going and get them started on a bowel movement. Do you have any remedies for enemas or?
Yeah, the enema's the best, just warm water. Mm-hmm. Just a warm water enema. The warm water goes up and softens, and also the castor oil on the abdomen.
A friend of mine, this is my last question, has a celiac, lupus, and she's come up with Crohn's at my age, mid-40s, and she was almost bled out. So they have her on chemotherapy, basically now. And at this point, I'm just trying to give her, I'll probably direct her to you.
Well, stop absolutely these foods. When someone has irritable bowel Crohn's severely, Sometimes they can't even take raw food because it can be irritating. So thick vegetable soups and stews are the best. Not forever, just until things settle down. And again, for someone like that, I'd go to the gut repair and take it 4 times a day.
Thank you.
Because as you see, medicine doesn't really have the answer. If I was in a serious car accident, I'd be very appreciative of medicine. But with disease, they don't have the answer. No more questions?
You were talking about the red clover for cancer types. What would you
Well,
use
just-
for that? What is that?
So the red clover for cancer. Now, can anyone remember why I mentioned that? Its nickname is the herbal scalpel.
Herbal
So
scalpel.
it's cutting away tumours. So a person would have a litre of the tea a day, or they might take supplements. Supplements mean that you can take it in high amounts. Red clover is very safe. You almost can't overdo it.
And how much red clover in the tea?
Well, usually it's a teaspoon to a cup of water. And because it's a flower, remember, you need to boil it if it's a berry, if it's a bark, if it's a root. But if it's a leaf or a flower, you just pour boiling water on it.
On the golden seal, when you take it for congestion for your nose, you said to put it on your hand and sniff it? What was the...
That's right. Now, if you make a fist, you'll find you've got a little dip there, and they used to call that the snuff dip.
Oh.
And you put a little bit in that dip and sniff, and then another little bit and sniff. You'll need to go near the mirror so that your nostril can go over it. Please don't let the air come out because the golden seal will disperse, and it's gold dust.
And how
I
long?
think for I think a kilo is half a pound, I think. Yep. So that's $450. That's what I've just paid for it.
Wow.
So it's very expensive.
It was $22 at Herb Shop here in town.
Pardon?
For an ounce.
Yeah, it's very
$22.
expensive, but you don't need very much.
And then how often do you do that to get rid of your congestion?
Well, it's for sinus. It'll
Right.
help clear out the sinus. You might do it 3 times a day. You might do it twice a day. I'll leave it up to you. You'll get to know what it does.
Thank you.
Well, what you're sniffing it into is just the sinus. So it clears out this area here. We just have to get a microphone. But we've got one at the back. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for your efforts, and then you are an excellent speaker, and we learn a lot. But I have a question. It's a personal, question. Do you take 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day?
Do I take 2 meals or 3 meals a day? Depends. If I know in some countries they have the main meal at 8:30 and 2:30, I do not need to eat again. But if I have an earlier lunch and I'm very busy in the afternoon, I'll have something very light at night. So, because I lose weight very, very fast. So it all depends on when my meals are, but probably a lot of the time it's 2 meals a day.
Yes. And then one person came to this seminar yesterday. He had a heart attack. And then I just gave him counsels on food and diet, and then Ministry of Healing, that kind of book. Is it recommendable?
Absolutely, they're excellent books, but they're cayenne pepper for him.
Oh, I see.
Oh, that's
Okay.
good, that's good.
Then,
maybe he needs to take a bit more.
Can I ask you, what kind of dishes do you take?
What kind?
2 meals.
Well, let me tell you what we had for breakfast this morning. We had, so Jeannie and I, between us, we had half a mango chopped up and half a grapefruit, and I probably had maybe a third of a cup of chia gel all over that. It's very, very nice. And I had maybe 6 almonds, maybe 3 or 4 cashews, and then I had a slice of the sourdough Tristan's bread. I think it's the quinoa bread, and then I put olive oil on that, then I put cayenne pepper on that, and then I had about a quarter of an avocado on that, and then I had about half a cup of savoury lentils on that.
Do you think?
And Jeannie, was it nice? You bet. It's a delicious breakfast, but you do not get hungry.
What kind of fruit we gonna take in heaven?
I think most people are pretty keen on the mangoes.
I have a friend, and he has a son. I think when he was 9 years old, and they removed the egg size cancer. And then ever since then, he's 14 years old, and then he's still having a chemotherapy.
Where was the cancer?
In the brain.
Yeah.
So, but she couldn't come here, so I was just asking her.
If it was me, I wouldn't have the chemotherapy. I've met some people and they've had the tumour out and it was very successful, but they still have the chemotherapy, and I say I would not have that.
She says when they stop the chemo and then start growing again.
Okay. So, yeah, every case you have to do what I guess you know best, but it's also nice to know that the red clover can cut away tumours, and also the castor oil from the outside can penetrate and break up tumours.
This question is related somewhat to yesterday's water and salt presentation. My dad has congestive heart failure, and I know others who do. It's a pretty common condition. And when he was in the hospital a while back, he ended up with low sodium, but they were telling him he needed to be on a no salt diet, and that didn't make any sense to me. And I so understand that he needed the Celtic salt, but do you have any other recommendations for people who are pretty entrenched in the disease where their legs swell and so forth, and they're elderly, and what else can we do to help them? Obviously Sustain Me, a lot of greens, and that kind of thing.
With swelling, what the swelling is the lymphatic system, and one of the best lymphatic stimulators is the rebounder, those little mini trampolines.
Yes, he does that as well.
Yeah.
Good.
So that's very good. And also, if someone has kidney problems, that's usually why their legs are swelling, they cannot drink a lot of water at once.
Okay.
It has to be little by little by little by little by little all through the day.
And every time a little grain of
when they
salt.
start the water, you see what that man needs is sodium in the balanced form, which is what Celtic salt is.
Yeah, so with every fluid,
Glass.
just water, or I'm trying to get an idea. He does drink quite a bit of tea, like herbal teas.
Yeah,
as
well, the corn silk tea is one of the best kidney herbs.
Corn silk? Oh.
Corn silk tea. And so if you can get organic, non-hybrid corn, save the silk, dry it, keep it into jars. It's excellent kidney. And the other 2 herbs that are excellent for kidneys are parsley and celery.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where juices can be good, putting the celery in the juice, half celery, half carrot. And parsley can be put into everything.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
What I was going to ask is, well, what I did is I took a ear, what do you call those? The ear, oh my goodness, a tip, a Q-tip. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I don't have them in my home.
Okay,
I don't put it in my ear. I just took one of those and I rolled it into the golden seal and I just put it in my nose. And my nose right away gets real watery and it clears it up. But my question was, it won't help in the throat as well?
Ah, yeah? Yeah,
It
you could
doesn't
try
seem
it
to
on
help
throat.
me with the throat, so that's why I was wondering if there's
You could try the throat. It's worth a try.
But I can't put it in there with a Q-tip, so would
You-
drinking it then be
Yeah,
be
put
better?
it in a little bit of water and drink it.
Thank you.
And the gut repair mixed, you said 8 parts slippery elm, 1 part golden seal, 1 part myrrh. Are they mixed together and then you put hot water on the top?
Yeah, you mix it together in a jar.
Yeah, and then you put hot water on the top.
And then
You put hot water on them?
yeah, take a teaspoon and mix it in hot water.
No boiling, just hot water.
Oh well, if it's boiling, you wouldn't be able to drink it. So you're just hot.
Mhm. I heard golden seal is very, very strong and sometimes it's not recommended. What's your thought on it?
I don't think I know of a time where you wouldn't recommend it.
Oh. Is it also good golden seal for stomach problems?
For what?
Stomach problems?
Yes, because remember it's king of tonics to all mucous membranes. So wherever you've got mucous membranes, you can use golden seal. You can use it as an eye wash because there's mucus there. You can sniff it up here for sinus. You can gargle it for a sore throat. You can take it in and it'll heal a stomach ulcer. You can take the tablet or drink it. It'll come out in your urine. It'll help heal from UTI. So wherever you've got mucus, the golden seal will help.
And myrrh comes in the powder form or it's...
Myrrh is a gum resin, so when we buy it, it's like in a lump, and we put it in a coffee grinder. You might be able to buy the myrrh already as a powder, but it will stick together a little bit because it's a gum resin. The golden seal is a root, and apparently when it's first planted, it's 7 years before they can harvest it, and it's very tiny, which is why it's expensive.
Do you have a treatment center, or if we have questions later on, is there some way we can contact you?
Yeah, there's the website, which is, I can give you the website for Misty Mountain, and there are 2 health retreats in the US that run our program now, and one is Living Springs in Roanoke, Alabama, and on Sunday I'll be there starting a 2-week program. And then when I come back to the US in July, I'll be running a couple of programs again at Living Springs, but also at Eden Valley Retreat in Colorado. So the website for Misty Mountain is www.mmh.com.au.
Okay, I'm prone to get skin cancer, and they're the small ones that they can usually freeze off, and I watch for those. Is there anything that I can put on topical that will kind of keep those under control?
There's a few things you can do for skin cancers. One is castor oil. If you do castor oil, it's putting a dot on twice a day, and it might take many months. And I have known someone to get rid of their skin cancer with aloe vera, and it's the same thing with aloe vera twice a day, and it might take many months. But there is something that will burn it out very quickly, and depending on how big it is, if it's a big one, it can be a little bit of a messy procedure because there'll be quite a reaction. It's black salve. And black salve contains bloodroot, and when bloodroot connects with cancer cells, it has a reaction, and it'll burn them out. We've done it probably hundreds of times.
Do you buy that salve?
Yeah. You buy the salve. It's got another name, and that's Cansema.
Can you tell us how to apply it?
How do you apply it? One way to identify a skin cancer is that it's got a little bit of a rough or scaly top. So you'd put a tiny dot on it. Did everyone hear that? Tiny dot. And then you cover it with tape and you don't touch it for 24 hours. After 24 hours, you take the tape off. And if there is cancer in there, it'll be red with a pussy centre. You'll have quite a reaction and you don't do anything. And over the next 24 hours, it can look a bit worse. And then little by little, the swelling goes down, the red starts to shrink, it dries out, and usually the cancer will fall out. Then you'll be left with a crater, a hole. And then over the next month or so, that will fill out. But you only apply it once. Now, if after a couple of months you think there might be still something there, then you'll apply it again. But you leave about 3 months between applications. Yeah, for basal cell carcinoma, melanoma, any type of skin cancer.
I have a testimony. My dad, who is 90, has gotten rid of several skin cancers with that method. So it does work. It worked every time.
Oh yeah, it's very good.
It's like natural surgery.
And
It's awesome.
if there's no reaction, well, there's no cancer.
Yes, and it helped to internally cleanse his body and implement the Sustain Me before we did it. We made sure that he was clean to receive it, and every time it worked. And I just have a question from somebody who's not here. Are there any other things on the stop list, meaning the 5 allergens
Do you
that...
know, there can be.
Okay.
There certainly can be. Some people are sensitive to the nightshade group of vegetables, which is potatoes, tomatoes, bell pepper, and eggplant. So some people have allergy to... so it's, you know... But what I put there is what I find the 5 most common allergens.
Most common. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Barbara, how many more questions do you want to take?
We might stop at 12, yeah? So we've got 5 more minutes. Is that all right?
One quick question. In the recent years, essential oils have become a big thing. What is your opinion about that?
Essential oils are great. I've got a few in my travel bag. They're very, very strong, so you don't need very much.
Every time I go to somebody's house that uses essential oils, it's like their house is living. I just love it.
It's certainly a nice scent, yeah.
I have a testimony on teeth. I had an infection on one tooth, and they were going to charge me $31,000 for do surgery on it. So I said, no way. So I went home and I took a teaspoon of golden seal and 1 teaspoon of myrrh powder, and that took care of the infection.
Well, I always ask, why is it there? There's always a reason. Sometimes it's because of root canals. That's a very common cause of infections in the mouth, but there's always a reason. Yes?
Can you use the black salve on plantar's warts? I have one on my finger, and I've been trying to get rid of it for a year.
Well, there's something you can put on plantar wart, and that is thuja cream, and it'll eat it out. You put it on a Band-Aid and just put it on every night, and it might take about a month, but thuja has a plant chemical in it that breaks down fine protein, so excellent for plantar warts. Well, if I was in Australia, I'd say go to the health food shop. I don't know what you have here, but I think shops like Trader Joe's, they have herbs, don't they?
Natural grocers.
Natural grocers, okay.
Yeah, you said to apply the black salve once, but I thought you said leave it on for 24 hours and then do it again.
No, I said
No,
take the tape off.
take the tape off.
Don't do it again. It's already going to be raised and angry.
Okay, all right. And that blood rot, root, does that go with black salve or is that something else?
That's the number one ingredient in black
Oh.
salve.
Okay. Last I knew, you could not get black salve here. So I don't know.
If you Google it, you'll find it.
And you mix all together to make a picture for the
No, you
Okay.
buy the cream and you apply it.
black salve. On your list of things, of allergies, if I understood it right, it's if you're allergic. Well, what I'm asking about is peanuts. If you're not allergic to peanuts, there's nothing wrong with them, correct, or am I wrong?
You're wrong. You see, God made peanuts and he made them good, but peanuts grow in the ground and they are commonly contaminated with mold. The only way you could have safe peanuts is if you grow them.
If I grew them myself.
Yeah, harvest them, wash them, cook them.
Oh, yeah, I lived in the South for a little while, and they cooked peanuts.
They love their peanuts.
Not my thing.
Yeah. So
But thank you.
If they're grown and handled properly, they're fine, but it's rare that you would find them.
I'm just one more question, double checking. The ulcerative colitis, you treat the same way as the things you were describing earlier.
The more severe, the more herbs you use.
Okay.
And remember what you're looking for. You look at history, you look at symptoms, and then you look at response. And the response will tell you to do more, to do less.
Got it.
You're watching and you're listening, because the body will faithfully tell you.
Thank you so much.
I have an allergy for any lotions or anything on my face. So about almost 20 years, I couldn't put anything on, even oils or lotions or anything. So what can I...
Well, if I were you, I wouldn't put any lotions or oils on. But why is that so? This is the body. And if the body has a high chemical load in it, you only have to put one more drop in and you get overflow. That's the reaction. So I don't put anything on my face, but my hands have been drying out because I've been doing so many dishes at my daughter's house. So I put some hand cream on. But I don't get a reaction because maybe my chemical load is here. So if I get one more drop coming in, I don't get overflow. I'm just guessing. But that's chemical sensitivity. When someone's very sensitive to chemicals, it's because their body has so much in it and they're reacting to that. Why that would be so, I do not know. If you look at the history, you might discover. Yes?
Barbara, a couple of days ago you mentioned that you have a new book on natural remedies, I think. Can you tell us when that will be available?
It's called Sustain Me. It's in the Graphic Designer at the moment, and we're hoping it'll be available in the next 6 months. But it basically is just a little handbook on natural remedies. I'm aiming for it to be no bigger than my Self-Heal by Design.
Thank you.
Because I don't like waffle. You know what I mean by waffle? People that go on and on and on. So in my book, there's no waffle. It's just straight to the point.
Yes, I was just going to say coconut oil is an excellent hand cream.
It is. It is. That is true. Coconut oil is good hand cream.
Maybe for your face too.
Yep. Yep. Okay, it's 12 o'clock. We'll have a break and come back in exactly 3 hours, and we're going to look at the liver and the way it detoxifies.